Prashant, it's great that you could join me for the Biomimicry Radio Show today. Welcome.
Thank you, Zainab. It's a pleasure to be, may I say, Merhaba Zainab Hajim.
Oh, exactly. Perfect pronunciation. Thank you. That's great. Could you please introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure. Well, Zainab, we usually define our identity using industrial or academic indicators, so let me try and begin a little differently. So I am a 48-year-old Homo sapien male living in Bangalore, India, along with my wife and a 6-year-old daughter. I am in a continuous pursuit of sustainable happiness, and in that journey, I have picked up a few degrees, a degree in architecture, and I practiced architecture for about 10 years. Then I picked up a degree in management. I did an MBA and worked for large corporations for 12 years. And then finally I found biomimicry, which I feel is the logical path. So here I am.
That's a great self-introduction. So do you remember the moment when you first heard the term biomimicry? What was your first reaction?
Yeah, I vividly remember my first, when I first heard biomimicry, it was in January of 2010. I had gone to attend a public lecture in the Indian Institute of Science in Bangalore, and there Mr. Peter Head, who is the chairman of the Ecological Sequestration Trust, gave a talk on sustainable urban futures, and he had a slide in which he had framed the approach in biomimicry principles. It was really an aha moment for me, as the biomimicry approach strongly resonated with my beliefs. And I think that after that, I immediately did what I suppose most of us do. I went and bought Janine's book on biomimicry, read it, and after that, I just couldn't stop myself, and I was almost, an informal researcher and trying to get my hands, reading anything that I could get my hands on. But the interesting thing that I can say that when I first heard about biomimicry, I felt more at home. Usually when you come up with something new, there is a feeling of finding something new. But when I found biomimicry, it was a discovery where I felt that I had this immense clarity of what is, rather than coming up with something new. So it was a totally different feeling. It was a feeling of getting relaxed.
Yeah, that's nice to hear. I find it interesting that each of us, we all have our unique ways of how we discovered biomimicry, but I think it's quite common that we feel it's the right thing to do upon hearing it for the first time. So it's a intense belief or persuasion, and it immediately pulls us in, right?
Absolutely.
So you recently graduated from the most extensive master's level program in biomimicry, which is called Be Professional, and you are practicing biomimicry. How does it feel like to be a biomimicry professional in India? I'm pretty sure that there are so many opportunities, yet it's probably also challenging as well.
I think both challenging as well as exhilarating. They both are come together. Let me break this into two parts. So first I want to talk about why biomimicry is something that I just know that I have to do. Mm-hmm. So having worked in the field of architecture, education, city planning, I was continuously feeling that there is something missing. I have had the opportunity to meet and work with many individually brilliant processes and ideas. But yet there was a lack of some truly integrated vision, which connected everything to the purpose of living, living on this planet. And it almost seemed like there is an orchestra which is full of brilliant musicians, but because of the absence of a competent conductor, there is a cacophony of brilliance. So when I got into biomimicry, I felt that I had found the custodian of harmony and coherence. So it was not for me getting into another education field or getting into another career. It was an arrival into coherence and something which I could then relate my own being in what was happening around me too. So it was really much more than taking an engineering degree or other degree. It was, if I may say, it was truthful learning. Mm-hmm. So in some ways, after having found that, it's like an epiphany, You are unable to think of pursuing anything else, and biomimicry becomes a way of life and a career, and that's the only thing that you want to do. And that's what I've done since then. And as far as the BPro program is concerned, I would say I finally found an integrated learning experience. The format of the program permitted people who are in various streams of life and who are locked into various geographies or time zones to be able to participate, which I felt is a very welcome thing. And also the program allowed and in fact facilitated connection not only at an intellectual level but also emotional level, which to me is extremely important and missing in most of our education. We tend to have huge emphasis on intellectual learning and how can you defend or really strive for something you don't love, and connecting emotionally I felt was extremely important and that the program provided. But most important for me was that the program is about learning to live on this planet. And once something tells you that how can we live gracefully and sustainably on the planet, then from that base we figure out everything else, how to do design, how to engineer, how to business, such that it can be aligned towards the ultimate purpose for the overall health of the planet. Now, this is a different departure from my earlier education, which was restricting itself on how to thrive in the economy.
I see.
And I dare say, I completely believe that most of our education should have the beginning point as how do we live on this planet. Once we know that, then we can design our economics, our production, such that it is aligned to living gracefully on the planet. So, to me, BPro was my first truthful education and my first fee which was well paid. So,
So you stepped into biomimicry with a lot of enthusiasm, and I know that your wife is involved in biomimicry as well, and together you're reaching thousands of people through workshops and conferences. What is the typical reaction you receive when you talk about biomimicry? Do people immediately get what you're talking about, and do they join you in that, relief and feeling of coherence?
Well, there are two levels of engagement broadly. One level of engagement, Zainab, would be when we get the opportunity to give a formal talk or hold a workshop. Yeah. When that happens, I can unequivocally say that we get an amazingly good response. We all our engagement where we've given a formal talk or we've taken a workshop, we've got amazing response. We've had students, teachers, even people who are scientists come up and say that this is what we should be doing, and it's very reassuring. However, there's another level where we interact at a everyday level with people where we don't have the opportunity to formally present and the interaction is limited in time. Those are times where we find that often people are unable to comprehend biomimicry and it's confused with biomimetic engineering or biomimetic biomorphism or sustainability. So my sense is that if given adequate depth, we've universally found everybody is euphoric and they get it. So we've had very good experience when it comes to formal talks, but sometimes when we don't have the time, it does get a little difficult to put across what biomimicry is.
Yeah, I have had the same experience. How about large corporations? You have a really vast experience in the world of big corporations. How do they approach biomimicry?
Well, to be very, very candid, I dare say that most corporations are still stuck in the models and measures of the industrial economy.
Yeah.
And I do feel that, in all fairness, a lot of the time sustainability, biomimicry are seen as new trends or fashion accessories, and not being given the kind of importance that they should be. Now, my take, now I have been part of large organizations for the last 10 to 12 years, so my sense is that at the end of the day, a corporation is its people and its leadership. So, if our corporation's leadership is mostly trained and focused on economic aspects, then I think it is expected that they would try and shape everything to fit the economy. I would like to believe that there needs to be some kind of a mandatory training such that our corporate leadership has adequate knowledge about the functioning of our planet. Because quite clearly, I think most of us do agree that our economy has become the primary instrument of how we control and shape our ecology as also our society. So if that be so, then the drivers of our economy are also the drivers of how our ecology and society is shaping up. If they don't know the terrain on which they are driving, then I don't think we are being very smart. Knowing how the planet works should be a non-negotiable license for anybody to take the responsibility of driving our planet. And I mean, that I think should be an obvious.
It should be the training of everyone, I think, not just management training, right?
Yeah, managing what and in what context. So I would think that repurposing of business and situating it in ecology is an absolute must. And though corporations are beginning to express interest, I think real change will come when we start influencing the people who run corporations.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's quite ironic to see how much time we spend, especially when we're, younger people, when we're small kids, to learn about the past, our history, and yet we don't have enough information about how the planet works, which is the context for all our designs, whatever we end up doing. Prashant, this is really an inspiring conversation, but we're coming to the end of our time. So my last question is about the future. How do you plan to pursue biomimicry in the long-term future?
Well, we are, as you rightly pointed out, my wife is also a biomimicry specialist. So together we have started our own social business called Biomimicry India, and we've also co-founded the Biomimicry India Network. So what we are aiming in the long term is to offer education, training, consultancy and research services in the field of biomimicry. But having said that, we also feel that biomimicry will be and is a living entity. That means that we would be ever responsive and alive to feedback and changing context. And our objectives and activities will adapt and evolve as time passes. So as of today, that's our objective. But we will be a living entity. We will change and evolve as time goes by.
Yeah, this is something that humans are not good at, adapting to context and evolving, right? We usually want to keep the ball still, as Dana Baumeister always says. But instead, we should be putting more energy into improving our adaptiveness to the context, I guess.
Yeah, that's what we hope for.
Perfect. Prashant, thank you so much for participating in the radio show. It was a privilege to connect you with my audience. Hope to stay in touch.
Thank you so much, Zainab. It was a pleasure.